Fathers. In the late 1990s, this man and his 3 colleagues co-founded PayPal. And now he's back on the cutting edge of fintech with his company Affirm. So here to talk to Zoe Bernard from The Information, please welcome founder and CEO of Affirm, Max Levchin.
Hello.
Hey, Max.
Hey, Zoe.
Hey, so good morning, afternoon, I guess. So Max Levchin is a veteran in Silicon Valley. He has been in the fintech space for 20 years. And kind of off and on, right? You were at PayPal, and then you were at Slide, and now you're back in fintech with Affirm. Can you kind of give an overview of what Affirm is?
Sure. It started out as a pretty pointed project to build a better credit score. I've always felt that FICO, which is used worldwide, but certainly in North America to score credit, has been behind the times, shall we say, in a sense that it represents new forms of credit and payment behavior poorly. And so my co-founders and I wanted to just build something that would be a little bit more dynamic, a little bit better work for people that were not anticipated when it was originally designed, like immigrants, which I am one of, or students, people like that who are now entering the credit space and borrowing. And as we started doing it, we realized that there's a bigger opportunity in the space, one, to reinvent point of sale behaviors where as young people are entering workforce and therefore earning money and therefore buying things and their lives are changing, they are no longer trusting credit cards. They're no longer trusting traditional financial products. And as a result, we built what we thought would be the honest, more transparent answer, more trustworthy answer to buying. And so we've built this fairly large company at this point where Affirm will provide a new form of payment, a simple, transparent, super convenient installment loan to buy anything that's a considered purchase, something that you have to think twice about, just sort of dropping some cash on. That's where we started, and at this point, we see our mission as fundamentally reimagining most financial products.
And your consumer base is largely millennials, is that right?
It's mostly young people, in a sense that we started thinking that only millennials are going to be willing to reconsider their financial options and trust a brand new startup that no one's ever heard of at the time. It turned out that many more people than just millennials were fed up with the financial institutions of today, and I think about 70% of our user base is Gen X or younger, so it does appeal to younger population, but 30% is everybody but those, and so we seem to have found appeal across the board.
So when you think about winning the trust of younger consumers and establishing a brand with them that they're going to continue using for a while, how do you do that?
The company was founded by 4 computer scientists, so you can generally assume that none of us knew anything about marketing, which probably helped us. One of the things that I did really early on, I was trying to find a great tagline because naively, I thought, well, we need a great tagline. Affirm is a wonderful name and it speaks to what we stand for, but what we need is a really catchy line. So somebody sent me this link, 1,000 taglines used by American banks. And if whatever you can think of that says, we are going to lend you money and you should trust us, it's already been come up with 4 words, 5 words, any combination of sort of like dizzying array of, we're on your side, we're with you, we're behind you, leading the, whatever you want. And so we sort of said, this is not going to work. Better, smarter marketers than us have already tried to inspire trust through words. We should just do it through actions. And
so it's like counterintuitive.
Sorry?
It's a little bit counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's almost like you say, you know what, you shouldn't trust us because everybody else already lied to you. No, what we did was design our product to speak for itself. And so, one, we, true story, on a flight from San Francisco to New York, about 5 hours, I tried to figure out how to compute compounding interest, given an APR and a loan, compounding rate, and a period of time.
And that's 5 hours.
In 5 hours. I thought it would take me 10 minutes, maybe before takeoff. By the time we landed, I had looked up several online calculators. I actually tracked down the government's regulation describing how to calculate it. It is freaking complicated, and I got it wrong. I still couldn't do it. And then I asked our CFO at the time, and he also couldn't do it. So if you expect normal people who don't have all time and 5 hours to spend to figure out what the actual cost of borrowing money is, you should change the way you borrow money. You shouldn't change the, you shouldn't provide calculators. And so we built a product that is a simple interest only, that has no compounding of interest past a certain number, has no late fees, has no fees of any kind. So we can actually tell you, here's a $1,000 loan, here's $60 of interest you're going to pay, that's it. If you're late, no change. If you pay us out of schedule, no change. If you have some kind of hardship and you can't pay it all, you can default, but we cannot charge you more money. And we thereby aligned our interests with our customers. And for a time, people would say, like, we would do a survey and would ask our consumers, hey, what would happen to you if you were late paying Affirm back? 60% initially would say there's a late fee, even though we said in giant letters there's no late fee. Over time, people started realizing that we actually are a good actor, that we won't take advantage of their misfortune, that we will not slap them with hidden charges where the least expected, and it worked. Over time, people started saying, wait a second, these are the one honest actor in lending.
So with Affirm's loans, what can I use Affirm to buy?
So we're now available in several thousand online retailers. We're embedded at the point of sale. Look for us either on the product pages or at the checkout, wherever you might start thinking, what's my budget, how do I pay for this? If Affirm is available, it's there. We also have an app that allows us to create, it's called a virtual card number, that allows you to use Affirm anywhere. So you can basically go to our app, you have to download it first, of course, and then Affirm becomes extensible everywhere. So we're practically supported at every retailer. And then about a year ago, we really took the plunge and built an offline product, kind of a true Affirm reach for the stars fashion, partnered with the world's largest retailer. So we're now available in every Walmart in the United States, and can literally walk into a Walmart and see a Affirm logo under a set of tires or a big screen TV, and you can find us there, and we will help you buy it with no gimmicks or fees.
So some of the things that you can use Affirm for, Warby Parker sunglasses or glasses, the Real consignment luxury goods. Do consumers really need to be taking out loans for products that maybe like $300 pair of shoes?
So one of the things that we figured out a long time ago is we had to have a very clear set of moral guidelines around what we will and will not do, suggest, restrict between our consumers' behavior and our merchants' behavior. The way we describe it to ourselves, sort of the way we figured out how to operate, is we will be highly prescriptive and entirely non-judgmental. It is not for us, we don't have the information to decide whether you should or should not buy something. Every time I thought in the early days I would actually look at the purchase stream and say, somebody's borrowing money to buy this $200 suit. What business, if they don't have the $200, gosh, shouldn't they be? And then we would reach out to the customer in a sort of post-purchase survey, and inevitably half the time it would be something like, yeah, they really shouldn't. And the other time they would be, oh yeah, I'm trying to get this job interview and I want to look 100% so I can get it. And so very quickly we figured out that judging people for buying is a fool's errand. You never know their personal circumstances, and the fact that they're borrowing money is something that is secondary to their need to buy a thing. On the flip side, because we don't charge fees, because we don't create these gimmicks or tricks where people end up paying us more, every loan that doesn't get paid back is a loss for us, and we think a loss for the consumer because they shouldn't have put themselves out into debt, even if it's a true necessity. And so as a result, we won't lend money where we think the person is certain not to pay us back, that they can't pay us back. And so this notion of non-judgmental, highly prescriptive has served us very, very well. Over time, we also found ways of building products that kind of obviate some of that moral choice. So the thing you referenced with Warby Parker, if you look at the terms for Warby Parker, it's a 0% loan. So we now have about a 30-something% of our volume comes from these loans where consumer pays no interest at all. In other words, they take a $100 pair of glasses and they pay $33 over the course of 3 months, and they're done at the end. There's no fees, same exact, super honest, super clean, transparent pricing, but consumer pays no interest. The merchant basically subsidizes the time value of money difference, and we make sure that everybody has enough money to share between the merchant and Affirm, but consumers have nothing to do with the incremental cost of money. And so that product is more about basically smoothing people's cash flow, making sure that they're not reeling from the impact of a purchase that they didn't anticipate.
So I want to draw on some of your experience as someone who's just really seen the gamut of fintech in Silicon Valley. How have conversations really shifted course since the founding of PayPal? What are you talking about now?
So I think actually one of the things that's really, really interesting about Silicon Valley writ large, and fintech is a fairly large part of it, fintech being, or finance being one of the very largest markets, I think we're spending a lot of time talking about morality of big tech, and morality of fintech is front and center. The very question you just asked, should people be borrowing money? Should you be lending money to people that not necessarily need it? I think the bigger conversation in tech universe, tech startup universe, has now hit on these very, very big, thorny moral issues, where we're saying, are we building things for good? Do we need AI that can eventually replace majority of jobs? Do we want to have self-driving cars that have to decide whether to hit a person or to injure the driver or to injure the passenger? So all of those things have now come front and center. And I think that's definitely it was not the topic of conversation 20 years ago in Silicon Valley when PayPal just began. We were much younger, much more focused on building huge companies, changing the world, but bringing it economic efficiency. Today, 20 years later, maybe it's the fact that I hang out with people who are 20 years older, maybe it's the fact that I've changed, but I spend a lot of my time talking about morality of the decisions we make and the companies we build and the projects we invest time and money in. I think that's actually the only antidote to the situation as we find it. I don't think you can, today anyway, run away or sidestep the morality conversations. I think you have to go right in and ask the questions very hard. Is what you're doing good? If it isn't, why are you doing it?
But how do you judge that? How do you determine? I mean, it's hard to look down the lanes of time and be like, is this going to be a good decision or is this not going to be a good decision? How do you facilitate those conversations?
I think a lot of the problems we take on today beg that question. I don't think you need to worry too much about the morality of a video game you're building, but a lot of people that were building video games 10 years ago are now asking questions, should we move notary records into the blockchain because that's more transparent? That might reveal transactions that need to remain secret, and that's a moral dilemma. And so I think the moral questions are everywhere. They're kind of begging them to be answered. I think we started Affirm in many ways asking the question, was PayPal fully moral? When we built a nicer user interface over kind of old decrepit credit card processing rails, we didn't really change the system underneath. There's still deferred interest, which is, as far as I'm concerned, basically evil. There's still money being made from fees. About half the revenue consumer banks derive in a subprime and near prime segment is coming from late fees. So all these things that are kind of very questionable, that are just paved over, are now coming to the fore. We asked all those questions and we had to come up with answers. I think ultimately your definition of morality is something for you, for all of us to contend with, but I think the fundamental thing we need to do is we need to ask the questions. We can't just say, well, you know what, it's economic interest for all, and so what if somebody gets hurt in the process? I don't think it's an option anymore, and I think that's very good. I think that's fundamentally what's different today versus Silicon Valley 10 years ago, Silicon Valley 20 years ago. Fintech is certainly no exception.
Huh, that's interesting. So even fintech is really embracing this discussion of morality. How about the issue of data privacy? How is that coming up in conversations? You guys just raised $300 million, is that right? And I imagine you're really focused on scaling the business. Yep. How do you do that? How do you scale at a fairly expedient pace, but also maintain privacy and security for your customers?
So the good news in the case of Affirm, a lot of us came from that PayPal crew, PayPal generation, sort of extended PayPal family, I would like to believe anyway that we were one of the very first Silicon Valley startups that took privacy and data security more than a little too very seriously. There's no such thing as too seriously. My background, sort of before the prehistoric times, was actually in data security. So I studied crypto and worked on crypto before crypto was currency. Crypto
right?
of the original meaning, the far less cool meaning, of course. But as a security wonk and a former almost cryptographer, I sort of brought all that DNA into PayPal. One of the more amusing things in the PayPal's history, and certainly in Affirm's history, to decrypt any large number of personal credentials, be it credit card numbers or SSNs or whatever it is that we have to store to do business, we actually implemented kind of a digital equivalent of the multiple people turning keys. If you've ever seen the movies where the president has to launch nukes and 3 people have to turn keys concurrently. We did that at PayPal and at Affirm, but I think in our case it was like 3 out of 7 instead of 2 out of 3, or maybe 5 out of 9 or something. I mean, we over-indexed on data security, which at the time a lot of people sort of thought like, why bother? Maybe you should encrypt it, but maybe not. Today, I think that's no longer a question. Everybody's very much on top of the need. But I think if you didn't start your company with that DNA, you're scrambling to figure out how do you fix that. There are plenty of startups now that will help you clean up your insecure data infrastructure. Fortunately, that's what we started with, both at PayPal, certainly at Affirm. Part of kind of a forced compliance, if you will, in the financial industry. We're very regulated. Despite not being a bank, we are just as regulated, just as tightly overseen as any bank would be. And so we get audited, we hire third-party auditors, we hire security auditors every quarter to make sure that everything we do is not just safe and secure, but compliant with a bunch of applicable law, including things like data privacy. So I think, if anything, financial technology startups are either ahead of the curve or are going to become extinct in a very short order. But in general, data security apocalypse is only starting. The casual nature with which people are reporting breaches is going to become more casual, not less. There'll be more data leaks and privacy. And I hope as people, as users, we don't lose the sense that we deserve to have our data properly secured, that we don't start thinking, what's the big deal? If it hasn't been hacked last week, it will be hacked next. It doesn't have to be that way. I think there are companies that know what they're doing, and others should get up to speed.
So you've described Affirm as a modern bank. Do you want to become a bank? What does it mean to be a modern bank?
I think there's two questions in that one. One is, do you want to offer services that a bank would offer? And the other one is, do you want to be regulated like a bank? The latter is probably a question I should answer with a pack full of lawyers next to me whispering into my ears, sort of saying exactly what the right thing is to say. But on the former, the very clear answer is yes. We think that there are products to be invented, reinvented in every space, not just your basic installment loan, kind of a nicer, smarter, more honest alternative to a credit card. We've built that today, but savings accounts haven't evolved in 100 years. Checking accounts haven't evolved. Checking accounts refer to things that most people, 20 years younger, probably don't even know what that means. A paper check, what's that for? And so there are all these products that, from my generation and older, took for granted as like, well, that's just a part of a basic bank offering. But why is it the case that your bank generally doesn't help you make money? You give them money to store, and the best they do is give you 0.25% back, maybe a tenth of a percent back. That seems like nonsense. There are all these companies that will give you 5% back, or whatever the latest announcement will be. And so, just reinventing all those services is a noble mission, and we're up for it. There's regulatory challenges and oversight to contend with on the other side. In the second you start doing things like investing money for people or advising them with their investments, you're subject to a bunch of regulation, which is not to be taken lightly at all. And every one of these products has to be thought through in terms of what we can do today as a non-bank and what we would be able to do under other regulatory regime. Ultimately, we're very much guided by what's good for our customers, what we think we can do for them. In the end, regulatory compliance is something that you do because you want to be good, not because you must do it. And so we are a good company. We try to be a good company, so we're not too afraid of that. But we will build whatever products we think we can do the best amount of positive change with.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.